Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. I have a remarkable clip to play for you guys today. The CBC has finally figured out that maybe Mark Carney is kind of a liar. Last week, I covered through CBC Gem that did some mental damage to me. I hate having to watch things on CBC Gem because they don't actually post their full clips on YouTube. You have to watch the full versions on Gem. And there was this interaction last week that I had covered between the conservative on the Power and Politics panel, Fred Delory, and I put conservative in very heavy air quotes. He had brought up to the host, David Cochrane, that, well, what's with Mark Carney spending $33 billion through an order in council? I thought this was the guy who was going to take the economy very seriously, and he had a plan, and now he needs more time to be able to pass a budget. So he's just signing over 33 billion to the different departments of government. And David Cochrane cut up and said, it's just to get us through the gap. This is just the money to get us through the gap right now in the budget, because the budget was passed in like late April of last year. And so he had to sign that money so that he had enough time over the next 3 weeks to table the new budget. Maybe he needed some time to schedule in King Charles to open up Parliament, whatever. David Cochrane jumped in and he said, no, there's a good explanation for all this. Well, yesterday, he basically had to admit, no, there's not a good explanation for this. Yeah, we were lied to. He sat on our show and said that he had a plan and that, he was going to have a budget for this year. And now the Liberals aren't even tabling a budget. And I was already on to this one because I had people correcting me and saying, no, it's just to get them to the next budget because they need to be able to keep the lights on. The gears of government need to keep turning. But what you'll notice about that OIC is that they never said this was just to bridge the gap for the next 3 weeks. And the numbers didn't line up with most of the departments. Some of the departments were only given 4 or 5% of their budget in that OIC, their yearly budget, which is like into like the hundreds of millions. They would have been given, 20 million, and it's a holdover amount, and that made sense. But other departments, like the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, in that OIC, were given things like $178 million in one shot. You probably know the CBC every single year, it has a budget of 1.4 billion, but its actual taxpayer portion of the budget is 1 billion. The other 400 million is through different types of, it's like ad revenue and other sorts of money that the CBC gets in from other non-governmental sources. And so why do they need 17.8% of their budget all in one shot? It's almost like Mark Carney is going around and giving money to departments or things other than just keeping the lights on. But now, here is David Cochrane on the Power and Politics panel talking about how they were lied to. I can't believe it. So today's award for the Fell For It Again award goes to David Cochrane because he has finally figured out that he fell for it.
Well, not necessarily the explanations that were given on camera. You can understand why they might want a bit more time than 2 weeks from now to have to table a budget, because that's what you'd have to be ready for.
The problem is here, David Cochrane was never told that on camera. Yes, he was promised a budget. He just assumed that this was to hold them over. And that's why I don't like the CBC. Fred Delory, I frequently disagree with him, but he was right to point out that the way that they were using this OIC was not very responsible. They did not explain it. They kind of signed it in the middle of the night on like Friday. Like at the end of the day on Friday, they signed it because obviously they wanted as little attention on as possible. And Mark Carney, as a savvy man, would know that bad business news always gets put out on a Friday afternoon so that it doesn't get carried or doesn't get talked about over the weekend. And then on Monday, you can reset. Monday is good news day. Friday is bad news day. Fred Delory pointed this out, and David went into full defense mode of explaining why they might do this. It's like, it's not your job as the host of an apparent neutral panel show. You're supposed to be the neutral host. Why are you jumping in front of bullets in front of the Liberal Party when they should come on your show and explain themselves? And now David's like, well, they lied to me. They said they were going to have a budget. Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow. The people who lied for 10 years straight in their Trudeau era government are going to keep lying in the Carney government because this is literally all the same people, including Carney.
But to not even give an update on the deficit projections and the economic projections, Fred, like that I don't get. Like, you may not have your whole plan ready to go with the dollar amounts and you want to talk to industry and these things, But like, we have no idea what the financial track of the government is right now, and they're going to ask people to vote on a $5 to $6 billion tax cut without knowing where that fits into the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes against the entire narrative of Carney that he is the man with a plan. That's why he told Canadians, and it's why he won this last election. They believed he had a plan. And in fact, he used it as an attack point. You know, a plan beats no plan. He has no plan now. He doesn't have a fiscal plan. It's now, he was elected leader of the party in March. You know, he could have given direction even before the election on what he wants his budget to look like. He had a costed platform.
And the thing is, too, he was the the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau for 5 years. He should know how to put a budget together. It's not like he has to go learn. My thing is that it's not like he's incompetent. He doesn't want to put out a budget because he just doesn't want to put out a budget. Because guess what you get to do when there's no budget? You can just kind of keep spurting out a little bit of money here and there. Oh, this department needs another 5 million. This department needs another 10 million. Oh, CBC needs another 30 million because it needs to make another 3 unfunny sitcoms. And it doesn't really hit big news every time another 20 million is spent or 20 billion is spent overall. But at the end of the year, people might realize that, wow, he spent somehow, you know, $70 billion more than Trudeau did in his last year. That's insane. But he just nickel and dimes his way to the top and gives money to all the interest groups that he's trying to keep in line. If Mark Carney is savvy in any way, it's on how to manipulate people, how to put on a good false front, how to seem fiscally responsible. At the same time, he's going to do the exact opposite. Seem like he cares about the energy industry. At the same time, he's still in favor of cap and trade and increasing the industrial carbon tax to make up for the consumer carbon tax that he's gotten rid of under conservative pressure. This is going to be a complete bait and switch government. And as much as David Cochrane and the CBC realize that Mark Carney's a liar, they're not going to realize too hard because they're still very much financially tied to the government since they are getting most of their budget from taxpayers. I'm going to play a little bit more of this, and I want to jump over to actually a CTV panel where they were also talking about this. And it's hilarious, again, just watching all these people be like, oh my goodness, he said he had a plan. Like, well, he was I cannot stop repeating it. He was like the economic advisor for like 5 years. A year is a long length of time. It's made up of 365 days, and he was in there for 5 of those suckers. And you guys didn't realize that his track record of bad economic performance, of bad plans under Trudeau, were going to translate into his government? Because Mark Carney's the type of guy, if he's the economic advisor, he's like making all the decisions. Mark Carney doesn't stick around as the economic advisor to like walk into Trudeau's office. He's like, hey guys, knock, knock, I have an idea. And you want it? And they're like, nah, Mark, well, maybe put on my desk. I'll read it next year. Okay. Like, Mark Carney's not working for Trudeau unless he gets to control the department that he's advising over. And so when people are acting like this is going to be a fresh government, like, no, it's obviously not. And saying he has a new plan doesn't make up for the track record, because previous results, track record tends to be the best indicator of how someone is going to do in the future, because that was effectively their tryout and he failed in his tryouts. But we're like, but maybe he just needs to be moved up to the big leagues. Yes, he failed in the minors, but let's move him to the top ranks, because then he will start flourishing.
Why is there no budget? I find it absolutely mind-boggling that they're doing this. That not giving anything, any kind of a statement.
But what about if it was like, because I'm trying to wrap my head around this too, right?
Now we're in the bargaining phase of the 5 stages of grief.
You know, when you guys won government in 2006 with Harper, he was sworn in early February. Budget came in May. So if you give like a financial update now and a budget in September, you know what I mean? But it doesn't even seem like there's going to be a budget at all. It's going to be an economic state. A Fez, your favorite thing.
Right. So look, the Liberals have always been trying to figure out how to budgets balance themselves. Just don't have a budget balance. Look at that.
Right.
No, it's absurd. And even going to September, I think, is not acceptable. You look at the 2006 when Harper came in, that was a wholly transformed government.
I get it.
And they had a number of months to do it, and they did it. Carney became leader of the party in March. He was prime minister in March. He could have started giving direction, and he just had a fully costed platform. Former, again, central banker, Mr. Finance guy, worked at the Department of Finance, knows the ins and outs of that department. He was one of the guys that helped us do our budget in 2008 when we did it. So it just makes no sense to me. In 2011, we had an election, and a few weeks later, we brought in the budget. That was the same government, same prime minister, but
I wanted to let that run a little bit because, again, I very infrequently agree with Fred Delory, but I think he laid out the history quite well there. I didn't even actually know that he had a hand in the 2008 budget. And again, so like, yeah, I don't know why everyone's so shocked at them doing this, but at the same time, this is very egregious. But here is the CTV panel that I think there was an interesting comment made, or at least I like to highlight the exasperation out there. For some reason, they have on Jagmeet Singh's brother, Guritan Singh, who's a full-on nutcase Khalistani. As much as Jagmeet's a Khalistani, like Guritan has no even ability to like hold himself back. The guy's a complete nutcase. I had someone tell me once he doesn't watch cricket, but if India ever loses a cricket match, he highlights it because that's how much of a nutcase he is.
Okay, Larissa, I wanted to ask you, when you consider what we had also seen around cabinet and in the corridors outside of cabinet, and how there were some mixed messaging there, what do you think is behind that? Do you think that they need to have a tighter grip on it? Or, you know, when you consider the fact that oftentimes you will trust these people to be able to say what they want to say, and I'm thinking of, you know, Stephen Guilbeault weighing in on pipelines, even though that's not his file anymore. And there's some of these things. Do you think that this is just some of the growing pains of a new government?
These aren't new people. These aren't neophytes. These aren't people who don't know how to bridge out of a question into something they want to talk about.
Absolutely. And this also applies to the budget. These people, and just as also what Fred Delory was saying, this is the fourth government and they still are pretending like they need to wait, they need to get their sea legs.
For so many years, the Liberal government has said one thing to one group of people and another thing to another group of people. I think it was glaring today, but I don't think for a hot minute that PMO didn't know exactly what Steve Guilbeault would say should he be asked that question anywhere he is. So anytime he's around national press, they're going to ask him. PMO knows what he's going to say, and frankly, I think they're okay with it. They like this idea where you say one thing to one group of people, another thing to another. But I have to mention the most glaring thing that happened this week is that we learned that there is no federal budget. And for a government that ran on, you know, themes of stability, predictability, reliability, you know, I'm Mark Carney, financial savior for all. To say that he's not going to put forward a budget is ludicrous. I cannot believe he doesn't understand the value of sharing what your fiscal plan is going to be and the value of having the voice of the people vote on it, right? Like if you just won this big election, put it down on paper, pass it through the House. The idea that we're going to rise in June so we can't sit, let me think of who could extend that sitting calendar. Oh, it's the Liberal Party. It's Mark Carney. He can make them sit. He's not bound by any sort of law that's...
Well, if anything, we should also probably have a longer sitting because we've gone without a government since, like, I think, was it like not even early December? I think it was like November. We haven't had a sitting government for a long time, to the point where I brought this up in the last episode. Mark Carney, in his mini government before the election, appointed somebody as the new House leader for the Liberals. The House never sat during that time, and now the lady's no longer the House leader. So she is, in Canadian history, I believe, the only House leader to never actually lead the House. Make it make sense. Anyways, so that should be it for this video, guys. I have more stuff coming out later. I have something I have to talk about with David Eby and the Communist Party of China. I have to go over my story about what happened in Victoria. That one's going to be a bit of a monster because it's just such a crazy story. Something even new happened regarding it today, where I and the Independents did a piece of messaging on something crazy an NDP minister stood up and basically said everyone in British Columbia who's not First Nations is illegitimate and they're a colonizer and a settler and whatnot, and this is all stolen. And we made a statement about it last night, and then the Conservatives were like, God dang, the Independents actually said something like conservative. They beat us to the punch. So they put out the same clip that I clipped to then feign offense at it, even though they're the ones who got rid of Dallas Brody because she rightfully called out the Graves hoax and Kamloops. But they're also going to take issue with the NDP. But then they messed it up because one of their morons, Peter Milobar, puts out a tweet basically saying, well, the problem with what the NDP MLA said is she didn't sound sincere. What, you just hope that she's a sincere racist? You just hope that she's sincerely anti-British Columbian? What the heck? And then he basically said, oh, they need to be implementing DRIPA harder. It's like, okay, more First Nations consultations and eco consultations. Good job, Peter. Good job for standing up for conservatism. But that's already getting me worked up. So that is another story for another day. I maybe at least I'm teasing you guys a bit. It's going to be fun when we talk about it. It involves actually 4 MLAs attacking me. And one of them was so pathetic. He tried to go after me for what I make, not realizing I voluntarily do not make very much. Looked like a moron. Then the next day had to delete his tweet. And because his own people probably were like, don't do that, or they're going to wonder how much we are making as staff, because I know the CPBC staff are heavily overpaid. I mean, like $150,000 for someone who barely shows up for work. I make $25,000, by the way. Anyways, that's it. So I'll talk to you guys later. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. See you later.